be awesome once it's done.
I'm pretty excited. Pretty awesome.
Elijah. I'll go on mute now.
Hi, Elijah.
All
Just
right.
trying to find the button.
We are live. Welcome to Triple T number 30. 30. Holy cow. And July 26, 2022. My name is TJ Zebel. I am the host, and I call myself a professional problem solver. And if this is your first time watching Triple T, we go for 2 hours. First hour, I basically open my brains and spill them on the table and share all sorts of funky little nuggets with you. If you have any questions, I will repeat that one more time for people who are afraid to ask questions. If you have any questions, please ask them. I don't mind chasing squirrels. Those of you that have been around me long enough know that I've got a whole forest full of squirrels that I chase around, and it can get interesting. If this is your first time, also please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell and share this with other people, and I invite them to come on. We do this every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Central. A little update. Next week, I will not be able to be here because I will be flying in the air, coming back from HypnoThoughts Live in Vegas, where I'll be presenting and working on a panel, presenting on a panel there. So the lovely Lenora will take over my seat and host. So grateful for that. So make sure you get everybody to tune in and check that out as well. Bring your questions, because she loves questions. But enough of that. Anybody got any updates, epiphanies, ahas they'd like to share before we get into what squirrels brought me this week?
I'll share. You and I were kind of talking about it earlier, but I found a book recently I'm reading. It's about ADD cleaning strategies, but we were just kind of talking about how important it is, what TJ said many times before about, if you're monkey versus fish, the monkey is judging the fish for not being able to climb the tree. But, if you know what your strengths are, that's okay. You don't have to do everything the same way as everybody else, as long as you're not, big one TJ said too, as long as you're not using it as an excuse to not do anything. So thanks for sharing that again. I needed to hear it again.
You're welcome. I've said it many times. If back in the day, if they were prescribing those letters as much as they do today, there is no doubt I would be ADD boy, ADHD, and any other way they could arrange the letters. But thank God I grew up in a small village where it was free range parenting, and got kicked out of the house in the morning, and did you make a sandwich for lunch? Now I don't want to see you until the street lights come on. No cell phones, bicycles, and a whole lot of world out there to explore and have fun with. And now today we're so quick to label, especially with the distractions that these kids are getting used to, cell phones and tablets and computers and texting and Instagram and all the above. And they wonder why they have some challenges focusing. Must be ADD. Could be the environment. But either way, we still need to acknowledge the fact that we still have to figure out how to work with them. Simon Sinek had a really good talk about that, and along with along with the ADD is, the sensitivity, which is one of the topics for tonight. He said part of it is on the parents. And we can't blame the parents a whole lot because they were given bad information. With the whole "I'm okay, you're okay" movement, and you can't punish a child because you're holding back their creativity and all of this stuff and trying the 1, 2, 3 count program and all the above. We're finding out that didn't work so well. And now those kids are old enough to be running businesses and working in businesses, and those people who were brought up a little differently, old school style, have to figure out how to work with them and not offend them because they're not very productive when they're hiding in the corner in their safe space. And if I just made you go to your safe space, stop typing, I'll help you. I offer a free 30-minute consultation to see if we can get you past it. But that brings us to, nice segue, the first one that I posted on Facebook, which is, how are you offended? And it seems like everybody is offended these days by the smallest thing. I'm offended. You have offended me. Wait a minute. Did I offend you or did you get offended? There's a difference in that. The difference is, if I say something that you don't like and you get offended, your values and criteria offended you because they didn't align with mine. Versus if I call your name out and go, yo, so-and-so, you're a full blah, 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 blah. Now I have offended you. And you have the ability to say that I have offended you personally. But we've all seen it now. Oh my goodness gracious. You don't wear the same clothes. Oh, who did you vote for? I am offended. You're a blah, 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 blah. Oh my God. And at some point, one of the best deals that I saw regarding this was, I offended you. Okay, show me on the dolly where I hurt you. Show me on the dolly. Are you bleeding? Do you need medical advice? Do you need help? Yes, it was words. Get over it. Back in the day, now, I don't know, maybe I'm going to show my age here, but there was a saying, play along with me, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. What a great concept to instill in children. And I'm pretty sure I just offended somebody because they're talking about sticks and stones breaking bones. Oh my God, so violent. And yet we're back to the same thing. So, man, people have been taught to be so offended by so many little things, and the amount of energy it consumes and the amount of days that it destroys. I wish I could remember who said this. Probably Jordan Peterson. Jordan, if you're out there, give me a call. Let's do lunch. But the saying was, so you had a bad day? Really? The whole day was bad? No, you had a bad 15 minutes. And you milked that thing for the whole day. In fact, some of you milked a bad 15 minutes for an eternity. I remember what you said when I was 5 and it ruined my whole life. Really? Seriously? You're gonna let that milk you for your entire life? And we know people like this. How long do you want to hang on to the thorns? I mean, come on. Hey, look at there. Out of the depths comes my buddy Elijah. Good to see you, brother.
I got a new light.
For a second there, I thought I was offending your camera.
Oh my God.
There are days I love technology, and well, there's the rest of the year. But if it wasn't for technology, I wouldn't be allowed to be here in this environment, seeing all of you beautiful people from all over the world. So, what do you guys? I know you guys got to have an opinion, some input on this because. Yes.
I definitely have thoughts on this. Especially when you get such a high from the dramatic attention of that negative state and you want to keep feeding it. So you have to keep telling this person and then the next person and then the next person, and like add life to this energy that really just didn't need to be there. It's very, I think it starts in somewhere in middle school. And then at least what I've seen is that it started somewhere in middle school. And then the media really started to play into it, because it's not like, oh, this person said this about this person slammed this person, and like the headlines are really aggressive, and you read them in an aggressive manner, and then you carry them into your conversation in an aggressive manner, and it really takes an awareness, and people don't necessarily have that awareness to say, oh, I've really been talking about this one thing for 3 days straight and I need to let it go, or, you know, that it has a life form of its own.
And it ties right into nothing means anything until we give it a label. And once you study language, especially neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotic language patterning, and then you listen to the news, my oh my, they seem to use quite a number of different patterns effectively. In fact, quite effectively.
Wait, hold on a minute. Can I play devil's advocate for a minute?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So are you saying it's not possible for people to have problems that last longer than the moment that they have the problem in?
Let me turn this up so I can hear what you said.
I'm saying, are you saying it's not possible for problems to persist for a long time?
Oh, problems can obviously exist for a long period of time, but we also have people that will milk problems out far beyond their lifespan.
Right, but some people are just in their problems, they're not just milking it.
Exactly.
And what do you say to those people? The ones who are not milking them, I mean.
Why is it so important for you to have that problem as a large part of your life? And what have you done to try and fix it? What hasn't worked so far? What can you do in the future to try and alleviate the problem? And why do you feel it necessary to include anybody around you into that problem?
Yeah, that felt like a bombardment. I don't think if I was the person who asked you the question, actually, that I'd be able to, like, I'd have to hear them and answer them one by one.
Correct. But I think we've all witnessed the people that want to include anybody and everybody into the problem, that when you ask them what they've done to try and alleviate it, they all give you the blank stare for a bit and then remind you that it's a problem. Yes, Lenora.
I'm gonna set an example. I feel like it depends on the context. It depends on the situation. If it's a very personal problem, that's one thing. But for example, if you went to the grocery store and they weren't bagging your groceries, like the person helping you wasn't bagging the groceries, and then you went out and told multiple people about it, that one I would kind of be like, okay, maybe that's not the best one. But if it was a personal issue where somebody truly deeply hurt you and you were talking about it, there's a difference between drudging up drama and talking through something and processing through something that really takes an emotional toll on you. Or this person cut you off in line, so then you had to go make a big deal about it at work, and how this person offended you and how dare they not look beyond the rest of the line, how rude are they? Different context. That to me is where I'm seeing the separation between the two.
Can I jump in here too for a minute?
Yes.
So this makes me think of the book, I don't know if you've read it, by Guy Winch. It's Emotional First Aid. And he talks about in that book that when you have a tragedy, and I mean, we all know that some of these things you might have to do something more aggressive like regression or whatever to properly process it. But in general, if you have something happen to you, you do need to process it. So the first time you're going through it is you processing it. If it's something really big, I can't remember what the numbers, I'll have to go back and reread the book, but I think you might even need to go through it 3 times to process it. But after that point, all you're doing every time you talk about it is relive it and make it bigger. And so so the first couple times you're helping yourself understand what happened to you, figuring out, am I overreacting? What do I need to do differently next time? What lessons do I need to learn from this? After that, you're just trying to get pity, and you're actually doing more damage every time you talk about it, not less, not helping yourself heal, if that makes sense.
And one of the things that Dr. David pointed out is each time we go into these events, describing them and all the above, basically we're reliving them. The energy is still there. Now that can be helpful in a therapeutic way to go in and find the energy and get rid of it. But for the people that are just out there hashing it over and over and over and over and over and over and over, at some point your body is taking that hit multiple times. And back to the how are you offended, sometimes when you drill down to what was the actual event, what was the actual damage, well, they said, and it was words. And they allowed those words to be turned into such a weapon that the damage was phenomenal, especially over extended periods of time. And I've gone over this protocol before, but the one of the quickest ways that I have them, especially with things that were said, is I will have them go back and essentially bring back the recording. Let me hear it exactly the way that it was recorded. What did they say? And I want you to say it with the same energy, volume, attitude, everything. And I've heard some nasty, vile, vicious, holy, how could you say something like that, especially to, somebody, usually it's in relationships that where it gets the worst. But then I'll ask them to describe what energy was in the words that were just said. And they'll describe it, and then I make them say the exact same words in a different voice typically I like to have them start out with Goofy from Disney. They're like, what? I'm like, you're such a hooka. And that'll get a little chuckle out of them. And I'll say, what color is the energy in that? And it's a different energy. Then I'll say, now I want you to do it in Mickey Mouse's voice. And they're like, what? Mickey Mouse. Oh, you're such a ho. And that'll get a few more little chuckles. And they're still saying the same nasty, vile words, but in a different mindset and a different language, a different voice. And then I'll typically have them finish off with Minnie Mouse, where they have to get even higher and squeakier. And by then they're cracking up. And I'll ask them what color of energy is in that. They'll tell me, and I'll go, do you realize you just said those icky, nasty, vile words laughing? It wasn't the words. It was how you recorded it and the energy that you put into the recording. So right back again to the topic, how are you offended? Well, it's kind of hard to offend somebody that a lot of people that hang out with me know what this is. And to keep it PC, I have no feces to give. I don't give a feces at all because there's nothing there. And okay, so you don't like my truck. Another one is the simple saying, it is what it is. Saw a lady in Lowe's since the last time I was on here. She had a t-shirt. It said on it, it is what it is. And I complimented her on it. I said, do you understand that some people consider people who can say that easily to be mildly dangerous? And she gave me a funny look. What? I said, because the people
TJ, to me, saying it is what it is almost like giving up. Like when someone's like defeated, and rather than fight against or
there's where the context
strength to fight or to right something that's wrong, saying, well, it is what it is. It's kind of like just like giving up on it.
And that's where the context lies in. And that's why some of those people, I wish I would have written down who said this part. He goes, because the people that can easily say it is what it is, typically are the ones who've been through enough shit that your attitude about something, again, doesn't have a whole lot of effect on them. You did what? That offends me. Well, it is what it is. Don't care. I don't care. I've got better stuff to worry about than you being offended because I wore a blue shirt, or the fact that I drive a diesel truck and you're torqued off because I'm not driving a Prius. It is what it is. I'm not going to go out of my way to try and make you happy over something like that. If I can handle that part. And that's why hearing that resonated with me. Right back to sticks and stones can break my bones, but words will never hurt me. It is what it is. You think I'm a Richard Cranium because of who I voted for, or because I like country music, or because I eat steak, or because I go to this church, or because there's always going to be somebody that's going to find something that will offend them. You can put a flower lover into the best arboretum, botanical garden, and they'll be offended because their favorite flower isn't there, or because their favorite flower isn't the first one when you enter the door. It is what it is. It's over there. It just, we had, when we finally got one, this space was taken up. It is what it is. Now, if they're using that excuse for doing damaging things to themselves, or especially if they're using that excuse when they are physically, mentally abusing people, that's different. That's a defense mechanism that is on a different level. But again, I think more people, especially in this day and age, might need to learn how to have an is what it is for some of the minor things that seem to be offending everybody now. Facebook police needs to take a little better it is what it is approach. My goodness gracious. I've been put in Facebook jail twice. And both times it was about a post that I made, like one was 8 years old. We ran across this post and it offended us. I'm like, I don't even remember posting the dang thing. And it was on a joke page. It is what it is. Get over it. Find something better to be offended about. Yes, I ranted for a little bit. But anybody got any other input on that, or should I move on to the next topic?
Hey, TJ,
Yes.
I just popped in here, so you may have covered this, and at the risk of being horribly unpolitically correct.
Perfect. I'm offended already.
Maybe you should take that to somebody who cares. Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think this is taught in the schools, and I think it's deliberate. Because people who have very, very touchy emotions are very easy to control. And people who get all wrapped up in their feelings and that kind of stuff, they're basically hamstrung, and they can't operate without someone else to set rules and to police the situation and yada yada yada. So unfortunately, having watched this for a while, I have come to the conclusion and seen some of these kids grow up and be, oh my Lord, completely dysfunctional and completely unable to make decisions and carry through. God forbid that they're gonna make some kind of mistake or it's wrong or something. They don't understand that these experiences are all learning experiences. These, what they would think are negative or difficult experiences, are all just ways that they can learn about themselves and how to operate in the world. And they just have absolutely no clue. And they're just so hamstrung. It is horrifying to me. I am so glad that I did not grow up now.
Oh, I took care of college rental homes for 14 years in San Diego. And I watched some of the hair trigger offended children that are coming up. Oh my, and the stuff that triggered their offensive energies, it offended me, and I feel sorry for them because, like you say, it's easy to control them, especially you can get them into an emotional lather effortlessly. But B, there are very few of them are prepared for how offensive the real world can be. And they go out into the real world and realize that they're not as special as they've been told they were for the last 12 years, even though they've got a 12th place trophy and 17 participation trophies on their wall. When they find out that the world doesn't care, they're like, what? What do you mean? I'm special.
I think most of them know. I think most of them know, actually, TJ, that they're not special. And I think that makes them horrifically insecure.
Oh, no, they found out when they got to college, that's what hit them in the forehead with a bat. I know, I've dealt with them.
I just think it makes her a very, very insecure individual. And, they don't know what their boundaries are. And, they don't know how to defend them for themselves. And their interpersonal skills are, I would imagine, fairly poor unless they're within their own little, self-reinforcing clique. Now, maybe this is just the old person going like, kids these days don't want, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? But having said that, it really frightens me because I've seen some of these kids and they are truly non-functional.
Yes. I literally had one young lady who just moved in and, of course, had the 28-page checklist of issues with the house, including the back interior of the fireplace in the dining room had cobwebs in it. And she needed some work done in her bedroom. And I was working on it. And we're talking just fine. All of a sudden, I get a text. And I look down from her mother. You need to leave the house now because my daughter needs to get ready for work. And I'm looking at her and I'm looking at the text and I go, is that your mom? She goes, yeah. I said, what are you studying? She goes, communications. A senior in college studying communications had to text her mother to have her mother text me to tell me that I need to leave so that she can get ready for work. Oh, I was like, I'm a big boy. You couldn't just say something crazy like, I got to get to work, so could you come back and finish this tomorrow? And I would have said, yeah, because that's called communication.
I pity the man. I pity the man, right? It's like, oh my God.
So, yeah.
Right. Enough whining and complaining. All right, I'm listening. I'm doing my chores, but I'm listening.
Good, that's okay. Which, let's segue into the next one. How do people see you in public? And that came from, since my wife and I moved to Dallas, we're both foodies and we enjoy occasionally eating out. And there are certain things that you just don't, I can make them at home. I love to cook. I like to think I'm a rather accomplished cook, but it's still nice to eat out. And after a number of different restaurant experiences, yesterday Saturday, my wife and I went to an Italian restaurant. And then yesterday I went to a pizza restaurant, and I finally called one of the ladies over when I was done and started up a little conversation with her. And I said, out of curiosity, is there some unwritten law that restaurant workers in Texas aren't allowed to smile while they're working? And she was like, what? I went, no, seriously. I mean, the last 4, 5, 6, 7 restaurants I've been to, y'all look like you just were informed that you're getting a pay cut and your vacation days have been taken away and you can't quit. And the look on her face was like, what? I went, well, look at your coworker over there. I said, do you know what RBF is? She goes, yeah. I said, a lot of it in this town, especially in restaurants. And her response was, I wish I would have recorded it. She goes, I don't know, maybe wearing masks all this time, we just forgot that we have to smile to people.
Oh, my Lord.
And I said, yeah, that would be by design. Emotions are taken away when you're hiding behind a mask. And I said, no offense, but restaurant industry is a really tough one. And I did bar and restaurant consultation for a while, and I've been in restaurants where the food was all right. I mean, it wasn't anything special, but it was packed every night because the staff was the reason you were there. You had fun when you went there. You walked in, the energy was awesome. And then I've been to other places where the food was awesome and the staff was, and you just wanted to eat your food or take it home. And the place that we went to Saturday, same thing. Family owned, renowned in the area. So that's why we wanted to try it. And the food was, but the staff literally looked like someone they just found out that their favorite cat died. Even the girl that waited on us would remember that she was standing in front of us talking to us and put a quick smile, but then it was time to go. And I'm like, there ain't nobody in here. You can act like you've got a little bit of, you care what we're ordering. And so when we left, I found out one of the co-owners was there behind the counter, and I talked to her a bit about it, and her response kind of said it. Yeah, it's just really hard to get these kids to, care about working. And yeah, I know. And I've tried this. Oh, I tried that. I know. And I'm like, no offense, but this is a family business. And yeah, I know are some of the costliest answers out there. I offered to come and do a training for free.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And the look on her face told me that I will not hear from her. How sad. And there was one booth that had 4 of the kids that were working there sitting in the booth on their phone, on their cell phone. Yeah, working. And I'm like, no offense, that's management. I don't care if they're your kids or what. If there's time for leaning, there's time for cleaning. And that restaurant still had plenty of room for cleaning. So the reason I titled this is How Do People See You in Public? We have to be cognitive of how we are. Yes, Lenora.
Hi, guys. So I do take this very seriously because and even the person who wrote Robert Greene, he said the first thing, assuming they have visual abilities, the first thing somebody sees about you is your look, is your presentation. And when I was growing up, my dad never would let me go to school in pajama pants or sweatpants of anything other than appropriate school clothes, even though it wasn't what the cool kids were doing, neither here nor there. Anyway, needless to say, I got dressed. So I also then started to really notice this in college and what a difference it makes when you actually get dressed and look like a human. But I think it really carries over to how well do you care for yourself is your ability to care for others. When you look like you rolled out of bed and you show up, especially in the medical field, and you show up in the hospital looking very disheveled, for me, I find it very concerning. I'm not saying that it's your level of skill, but take care of yourself to take care of others. It shows that you can care for yourself and you have the ability to set the intention and care for others. And I think that's very important because especially when you're coming in and you're coming to see your loved one and somebody they look half hungover, it visually, visually it's alarming because you're caring for my loved one. I'm not insulting your intelligence, but this is the first thing that's hitting me. And that's important. You're making an impression. So I think that's really something, even with wait staff, when they look like, or anybody really, when you look like you tumbled out of bed, it's the first thing that hits me is, okay, your level of care might not be up to par where you want it to be today. But I smiling and greeting somebody, I think is very, very important.
And it's very important, again, like you say, in the medical, the hospitality, things of that nature. And the other part I learned very early on is, well, no, I take that back. In high school, had a case of this. When I went to college, I was better at it, but not quite as much because I knew what I knew, and I knew that I thought I knew that it didn't matter as much. And I wish I could remember where I learned it. But now, anytime I go to classes, I dress up in shirt and a tie because I've found out that my cognition raises because of the way that I've dressed. Also, when I fly, people now know that anytime that I'm flying, I'm dressed up full business. And I've had some people like, when you got to go through the deal anyway, and you got to take off your shoes and your belt and your da 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 da. And I said, yep. But one thing I've noticed, it's not that big of an inconvenience, but the way I get treated because I'm dressed that way is undeniable. And I watch the people in front of me and behind me who are dressed like they just got out of bed. They got their sweats, their flip-flops, their workout tank on, and their hair is undone. And they don't get offered assistance. They don't get the smile when, you both of us will sit down at the bar at the exact same time, and the wait staff comes to me first. And then they'll look at the other person who looks like they just rolled out of bed and like, yeah, can I help you? What do you need? Now, that person who looks like they just rolled out of bed could very well be worth 10 times what I am on paper. But I try to look clean, kept, and professional, and have fun. Any of you that have seen me out in public know that if I look like I'm having a bad day in public, I'm having a bad day. And I'm doing the best I can not to share my bad day with other people. But if I look it, you can bet the feces has hit the rotating oscillator and pointed right at me, and I'll still survive.
Hey, TJ,
Yeah,
you want to see customer service?
yeah.
Put on a dress and go to Home Depot.
Uh-huh.
A friend of mine was whining and complaining about, I don't know, Home Depot or Lowe's and no service and cranky people and yada, yada. And then the next day she says, apparently it matters what you're wearing because, it was a step up and she was getting some nice people and some customer service, right? And I just started laughing. It's like the one time I ever went to Home Depot in a dress, and I was like, holy crap. I had to do this every day. Just for the laughs, just saying, it matters. It really matters.
And trust me, I know that because that is my second home for most of that. There have been times I've been thinking about just getting my mail at Home Depot because it'd be easier. But yes, I get people, the amount of time that I spend helping customers in Home Depot is crazy to some people. That's why my wife can't go to Home Depot with me. It drives her nuts because she just wants to get in, grab her stuff, and get out as quickly as possible. And I recognize that look on people's face where they're looking up and they're like, and because I got to help people, out of curiosity, is there something you're looking for? Yeah, I was looking for this. And I'm like, oh, well, that's over here. How are you going to use it? Well, no, you probably want to do it this way. And when you do this, make sure this and da. And sure enough, they'll be like, how, you work here? I'm like, no. Really? No, I just like helping people. And it pays off. I've actually gotten a number of clients that way, and that isn't my intent. My intent is just to help people and to help people have a better day than they were having before they met me. And it's not as hard as people think it could, should, would be. Because even a person who's having a great day, when they see somebody else having a great day, their day gets even better.
I had that experience today. I had to run down to the grocery store for something. And I got my head all wrapped around what I'm doing, and I'm not making progress. And I'm just like, rah, 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 rah. And all of a sudden I realized, I said to myself, wait a minute. I could just smile at somebody. And my day might brighten up a little bit. So I did, and then I was talking to the cashier and, smiling at the checkout guy and the, grocery bag or whatever. And I really did feel a lot better. But I was just like all in my head on all little Miss Grump Grump until it occurred to me that I didn't have to be that way. So it's very true.
And isn't it interesting how the more you get used to catching yourself, the easier it is?
And the easier it is to pull yourself out of it too. It's just, you're like, oh yeah, I remember. I know how this works. I got this.
Yeah. And for those of you that are thinking, yes, I have bad days. That's my wife. But she knows when I'm having bad days because they're few and far between, on purpose by design. Because I have to evaluate, is what is going on worth the energy that it's taking from me? And is it worth the bad day that I'm having, which is taking away from the good day I could be having? And it's almost like that quote of, when I think about all the energy I've wasted worrying about 100 things that could go wrong, 99 of which never did, and the one thing that did was pretty small. And then you combine that with the quote of, you didn't have a bad day, you had a bad 15 minutes and you milked it for an entire day. Those two put a lot of stress and worry into a whole new place. Well, am I having a bad day? No, I just, that dude torqued me off. All right, good. It took him 2.5 seconds to torque you off. How much longer do you want to let that continue to eat at you? Get over it. Move on. Life is both long and it's short.
I had a fella who was very wise a long time ago. And he once told me something and it along that line. And it was, well, you already, whatever, lost the game or whatever it was that happened. And now you want to feel bad too.
Yeah.
It's like, in a way, it's like piling on. You've already got this, you had that disappointment, you had whatever, and you had to go through that. Okay, fine. So how's about you just kind of ease up on yourself a little bit and let go of some of that? And it's not, in other words, the second part isn't necessary. The first part was unavoidable and outside of your control. You didn't have any way to avoid it. But this part you have some control over. And why do double duty?
Yeah. I heard that same type of analogy put to the saying of not worth crying over spilled milk. Yeah, you've already lost the milk. Now you're going to let it take away a good day too? It's sometimes you just got to cut the string to move on. Which gives us 6 minutes to move on to the dating and relationship portion that I put up there, which was mainly just to, there was a quote that I found by Jean-Paul Sartre. If I said that wrong, stop typing. I've not met the person. But the quote was, if you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. I'll read it again. If you're lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. One of the things when I'm working with clients for relationships is we work on their self-image and their ability to enjoy being with themselves. The one person that you are around the longest is you. You are stuck with you your entire life. And if you can't enjoy the person in the mirror, it's a long ass time. Out of all the people in the world who can have the control to improve that person in the mirror and to work with that person in the mirror and learn to love that person in the mirror, it's you. And if you can't figure out how to love the person in the mirror, it's going to be a real challenge to love anybody else or let anybody else love you. Because it's all going to feel made up or like a lie. And I feel for women in the last couple of decades, because the fashion industry has sent out so many lies of you have to look like this and you have to look like that, and if your hair isn't like this or isn't like that, or if your body isn't like this, or if you don't look like this photoshopped supermodel who doesn't even look like that in real life, then you're not pretty. And the things that I've heard women say about themselves, it breaks my heart. Oh, my this or my that, or oh. And they don't realize how perfect they are. And my first client today, he said it's okay if I talk about the session a little bit, because I told him I was going to do this protocol. But he's got the challenge of being gay and wanting a relationship. And I'm like, I will absolutely help you. I mean, it's hard enough for anybody to find that relationship. And then when you whittle it down to a smaller section, a smaller selection, but I don't think that was his problem. And I think we figured it out too. Because just like so many of us, he had heard something said to him at a young age, and he believed it. And he thought he was too skinny, which didn't make him masculine enough. He's a good-looking dude. And I said, what does skinny have to do with being masculine? Like TSWB, tall, skinny, white boy. I have no problem in my masculinity. I said, but let me ask you another person. I said, you're kind of built like somebody that we probably both recognize on the street, or at least on TV, Kid Rock. I said, if you think if somebody went up to Kid Rock and said, dude, you're not very masculine, what would he say? And my client's like, oh, he'd be like, hell no. I went, yeah. Well, if you're built just like Kid Rock, who the hell told you you're not masculine enough? It's not the body. It's the person that you're talking to in the mirror. So we went in, we cleaned up, did some regression stuff, and of course, 5 years old. 5 years old, that program got put on his hard drive. And he's been dealing with it ever since. And today we went in and we had a little talk with the 5-year-old and cleaned up the energy, extracted the lessons. And when we were done, he said for the first time, he got to look at the person that was in the mirror and tell him he loved him unconditionally and that he's perfect and he's enough and he always has been. And I ain't gonna lie, it was damn cool. Yes, yay! Both of us freaking crying because I'm a masculine dude who isn't afraid to cry. But now he's on the path of healing that part up and working on the other protocols to find his person. And that brings us to the end of the first hour, where if you've been on Triple T before, you know that I now turn the platform over to open mic, open platform. If any of you have any questions or topics you would like addressed, we all chip in and help each other out. And if you leave me hanging, I reach out and see how many squirrels I can pull out of the woods. But right now, I'd like to open up the panel, and if you guys have anything that you would like to talk about, please share them now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you go over your protocol for future pacing, as in kind of like double checking your work? So once you clear it, and then I know, can you pull that feeling back up? But even like for somebody breaking a habit, so like they go home and they do X, Y, and Z, how to future pace that? Maybe I just need to hear it differently, or anybody else's interpretation.
Yes,
Okay.
obviously I've got my protocol, but Elijah, Holly, you guys want to share on that topic before I go on to mine?
I have similar questions, so I'm just curious to hear what everybody else says.
Is that yes? I'll have some.
I'll share after, not before.
Oh, the pressure's on. Okay. With what the approach that I do on that, once we've gone back and we've cleaned up and I do a protocol where now I have them identify the energy, do a carbon date test on it, figure out how old the energy might be, and then I have them weave a net to be able to extract all the lessons out of the energy and put them into their lesson box, and then deal with the leftover energy that after the lessons are extracted and safely locked away. Find out what they want instead, put that in place. Then I'll do the future pacing. And I usually like to do 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. I figure 5 years out is a good enough outreach to see if anything popped up. And my favorite is, okay, we're gonna send you 6 months into the future, January 26, 2023. Land down, look around, see what you see, hear what you hear, taste and smell what you taste and smell. Notice where you live, notice what you drive, notice what kind of work you're doing, notice who you hang out with, notice your bank account, notice your work schedule. Spend a few days in this new reality. walk around where you live and stop in front of a mirror and notice how you feel about the person looking back at you. What's different? What's changed? And if there was something specific we were working on, then I will have them, I'll say, and what do you notice different about XYZ? And then wash, rinse, repeat 1 year, 3 years, 5 years. And sometimes what will happen is 6 months will be fine. 1 year will show up and all of a sudden they'll be like, something isn't right. That's where you've uncovered a landmine and you can go back and figure out where it is, what it is, clean that up, and then start the process all over. Sometimes what you'll find is self-sabotage. You cleaned up the lesson from the 5-year-old, not realizing that the 12-year-old had something hidden, and you got to go back and clean that up. Once we get that all cleaned up, everything's good at 5 years or wherever, as far out as you want to go. Then I typically will have them turn around and look back to today's date and notice the trajectory. How has it changed from where it was before we fixed everything? Before we fixed everything, your subconscious had already plotted out a course based on your history. Well, now that we've changed history, cleaned everything up, that trajectory is going to change, and you're going to end up here in a different lifestyle than before. And I like to have them go back and go through that trajectory, not once, not twice, but hundreds of thousands of times at the speed of thought, so that you understand, you recognize every twist, turn, T, Y in the road, dips, so that when you're going along this trajectory, it's never going to be a perfectly smooth, no problems trajectory. So we want to be prepared so when you get one of those dips, you don't start freaking out because you've already figured out where you're going. So even if that dip seems pretty traumatic, you're already comfortable with the fact that it's going to upswing and still bring you up here where you've already been. Does that make sense? Any questions on that before Elijah? You're not reading out loud?
What was the question?
Go ahead, Lamar. About future pacing.
Got it. The question was about how to future pace, like how to double check your work. So basically you go through and you are talking and you're clearing this energy with that person.
What do you mean
And
by
so
double check your work?
So for example, if you have somebody doing something habitual, like going home and binge eating or going home and drinking every night, and they're trying to break the habit, so you clear that. How do you
I used to do the way I learned from David, which is pretty much the way TJ was explaining just now, with things like future pacing. But I don't do that anymore. John teaches what he calls stalking the wild synesthesia. Now, synesthesia is when you have an overlap of rep systems. So, for example, if you could taste a color, or if you could smell a sunset or something like that, right? So you have a literal overlap of the senses. That's not exactly what he means by synesthesia, although that's the actual definition of synesthesia. What he means when he says synesthesia is that two systems fire so quickly one after the other that you could consider them to have happened at the same time. So most problems that people come to you with are a see, feel synesthesia. So usually it's some kind of visual trigger that makes you feel bad, right? So maybe you see something and that triggers a bad feeling. That would be a visual kinesthetic synesthesia. And what happens with these synesthesias is there's a chain. It's like imagine there's like a chain of events that happen internally in the person's mind between the moment they see the trigger that triggers them and the feeling that they get that's a bad feeling. There's a whole sequence of associations that happen in between then and then, right? So as an example, I don't know, give me an example of a problem.
Like somebody coming home and drinking every night.
Okay, so they're coming home and drinking. Let's say they are spatially anchored to drinking, right? Like they come home, so it's their living room or their kitchen or their bedroom or wherever, one room that is reminding them to drink, right? That's like the trigger, yeah. So, but between the time when they are reminded to drink and when they actually drink, there is a whole sequence of internal things that happen. We don't know what they are. They could be pictures, they could be sounds, they could be memories, they could be, you know, someone telling them they're worthless when they were a kid or whatever else, right? The problem is that that whole sequence of things that happens between the trigger and the behavior is outside of conscious awareness. Imagine it's like a train with lots of cars in the train, and you got the first car, which is the trigger, and the last car, which is them drinking, and they're completely unaware that there's a train in between the first car and the last car, right? So what happens is John teaches to stalk and become aware of that, the rest of the train, the middle part, right? You become aware of it, and then you change it, you know, using whatever technique you want. Doesn't really matter, you know, whether it's parts or aggression or whatever else, doesn't matter, right? But then you set it back to unconscious, so they're no longer aware of it anymore. Okay, so they become aware of it while it's changing. They're aware of the change that it happened, but then they remember to forget it again. And then what you do is you purposefully fire their trigger, the same trigger that was causing the bad behavior in the first place. And when you purposely fire the trigger, you watch and see if they do the old behavior or if they do a new behavior. And that's how you actually test your work. Okay. And if you want to talk specifically about future pacing, I do something similar. I used to do something very similar to what TJ did. I do, you know, the 1 week from now, a day from now, a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. And then I used to do what's called an infinity loop, which is I would, you know, because they keep cycling over and over and over and over, right, until they can't remember it any other way. And then on one of the loops, I would have them stop just a minute or so before I asked them to close their eyes in today's trance, right? So that it's in the past. If like, I know I kind of didn't finish what I was saying before, but there's a purpose. I'm doing this on purpose, right? So imagine you're the client, right? Okay. and I'm the hypnotist. And at some point, I say, close your eyes, take a deep breath, blah, blah, blah. We go into trance. Okay. We do the whole trance work. Then we get to the end of the trance. I'm going to future pace, right? So we do like 1 week in the future, a month in the future, 6 months, whatever, however many times. And then you do the loop, right? So you kind of keep going through the loop. You go forward to the end of your life, and you go back to the point of conception, and you go over and over and over until you can't remember life any other way than through this new way of thinking that you've now had through the transformation within the trance, right? On one of the repetitions, I would have you stop just at the moment when you first went into trance today, which is, let's say you've been in trance for half an hour. So it's half an hour in the past from now, right? And then I would have you teach that person, that you who's about to go into trance half an hour ago, everything that you've learned in the trance that you've just had over the last half an hour, which includes the future pacing. So now what happens is you have this loop where you go forwards to the end of the time, then you go back all the way to conception, and you go forwards, stop at the point before you went into trance, and then experience the trance again. So you kind of have this infinity double loop future pace thing going on, and it feeds onto itself so that it can never actually be undone. I have to kind of do a demo of it, otherwise it doesn't really make sense when you just try and explain it in words. But trust me, it works really well, because you put the end of it back into the beginning of the trance, and so it loops onto itself, and it becomes an inescapable loop, right? In the same way, what I was saying about the John Overdurf thing, right? When you take something out of someone's unconscious and make it conscious, and then change it, once you set it back into unconscious, it kind of puts it back onto that autopilot, the same inescapable loop that I'm talking about. It's not possible. Like, you won't even, in a way, you won't have to check your work. That's the kind of beauty of it, is that you can fire the trigger and see the new behavior, but you wouldn't even have to. Does any of what I say make sense, or am I just rambling? Fran knows what I'm talking about. Fran, you see me do it. Fran, see me do it. Right? But yeah, it's kind of, so there's 4 things, right? Context, trigger, state, behavior. Context, trigger, state, behavior. When someone comes with a problem, I want to know when and where does it happen. I want to know the context. When and where does it happen? I want to know about the trigger. I want to know, what is it that sets you off in that scenario? Right? I want to know the state. What's the state that you're in when it happens, or what's the state that you go into once it happens, right? And I want to know the behavior. What is it that's wrong? What is it you're doing that's wrong? What is it that you want to change? Context, trigger, state, behavior. Right? And then same for the outcome state. I want to know context, trigger, state, behavior. Like, if that's the way you've been, how do you want to be different? And in that different scenario, context, trigger, state, behavior, what are they? Yeah? Right. Once you have those 2, you can do any number of things to make the change, to make the shift, right? So, you know about inductive and deductive, right? So you said to me earlier, well, nobody knows. You said to me earlier about an absolute, right? There's an absolute. There was anything, right? I said anything, yeah. So
You're talking about quantifiers or absolutes?
Quantifiers, yeah, an absolute, right? A universal quantifier would be an absolute, right? So there's inductive and deductive. Inductive just means something that starts small and opens up. Yeah, and deductive is the opposite. It starts wide and it narrows down. Okay. So when you do context, you're asking when and where does this happen? Right? And the person will be like, oh, it happens all the time. And you're like, no, because you can't work with it all the time. Do you want to give me one? Okay, if it happens all the time, Mr. Client, tell me about one specific time when it did happen. It must be easy for you to pick out one time and remember one time when it did happen. So you find out, and what you're doing is you're going deductive into one specific, because what happens, what's happening is someone's coming to you with a problem that's generalized across several contexts. And in order for you to get a resource state that's big enough to collapse it across that many different contexts, you'd have to have some kind of super mega nutty, crazy Tony Robbins, I'm walking on fire kind of state. And even then it might not work, right? So by asking, tell me about one time when it happened, where were you? When did it happen? When and where did it happen? What you're doing is you're de-generalizing it, going deductive and bringing it into one single context, right? Then what you do is you work through that context. You work through that specific problem that happened on that specific day, at that specific time, with that specific person in that specific place. And you give them the resources necessary to overcome that one example of it happening, right? And they feel great. They feel amazing. You loop it back several times and you test it many different times and it becomes really strong. And in that particular scenario, they feel great. You overcame it. Now you do the future pace and you give them the instruction, okay, take that, what you've learned there, and re-generalize it to other areas, other contexts in your life where it might be applicable. And that's what it is. You start with something, they come in with something generalized, you go super specific, you fix the specific thing, and then you re-generalize the solution. Whereas if you try to fix the solution when it's already generalized, it's going to be very difficult for you to do that. Yeah, that's like the divide and conquer method of therapy, because everyone comes in with problems that are mega generalized across several contexts. I feel worthless. Oh, when do you feel worthless? All the time. You can't work with all the time. Okay, give me one example of when you felt worthless. Oh, well, I was in 6th grade and my teacher said something, the other kids laughed. Okay, we can work with that. They might think that that doesn't help them today, but it doesn't matter, because here's the thing, and TJ might disagree with this one, I don't know. There's no such thing as root cause. Okay, you know, when people talk about the very first scene, situation, or event, and tell me about the first time it happened, it doesn't fucking matter. Excuse my language, sorry. It doesn't matter. Because regardless where you go in, whether it's the first one or in any other one, it's just an entry point into the system. And whether you get the very first one or not is irrelevant, because eventually the solution that you inject into the system that helps it change will find its way throughout the system. Just like if you inject adrenaline into your arm, will it reach your heart? Yes, it will. If I inject it into my chest, will it reach my heart? Yes, it will. If I inject it into my leg, will it reach my heart? Eventually, yes, it will. It doesn't matter if you get the first one or not. It will eventually go through the system and you will get it. Yeah. So you degeneralize and get specific. You fix the one particular thing, and then you give permission via future pacing to generalize that solution out across other contexts in the person's life. And then once you've done that, I'm coming to you, friend. Once you've done that, then you refire the original trigger to test the behavior.
Thank
Yes, Fran?
you.
Is it the looping that generalizes it all through the system, because it sounds really similar to
So
the sort
the
of
looping
timeline
happens in two ways, right?
Yep.
There's two levels of looping. Okay. There's the looping that happens during the future pace, if that's what you're talking about right now, right? Which is when you go over and over and over until you can't remember it any other way. That's one form of looping. But before you even get to that point, you're already looping, because when you're doing the change, when you do the collapse, when you do the collapse, right? So when you do the collapse, you then ask the person, how do you feel now? And they're going to say something that's different, that's not necessarily the problem where they were, right? And that, whatever different thing it is an additional resource on top of the one you already used to do the collapse. So now you're going to say, okay, well, you have that thing that we had just now that we used to do the collapse, plus you've got now this new thing. If you add both of them together and now look at the problem, and you do the same collapse, but a second time with the second resource. Now you've got two resources.
Sorry, I just missed a step there. You've done the collapse and then you've added a new resource. Can you explain how that fits? I haven't.
So let's say, for example, the problem is anxiety. Just an example, just so we have words so it makes sense. Let's say the problem is anxiety, right? And you get them into a state of excitement. And when they're excited and they're in front of you and you can see that they're excited, you say, okay, well, now that you feel all this excitement, think about that time when you're anxious. And you're going to use excitement to collapse anxiety, right? Okay. Once they think about anxiety in an excited state, you're going to ask them, well, how do you feel about that? And they're going to say, oh, it's interesting. Now you've got interesting is another resource that's not anxiety nor excitement. They say, okay, you like interesting. Is interesting good? Yeah, interesting is good, blah, 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 whatever. They say, okay, so now I want you to feel all the excitement that you felt a moment ago and add to that how interesting it can be. So you've got now excitement plus interesting, and you're going to use both of them to then combine them together and then look at anxious. So now you've got two resources looking at anxious. And you basically, in a way, that's also a loop, right? So you've done the collapse once, you've got this the second resource, which in this case was interesting, and you've done the collapse again, which is another loop. So you have this over and over and over looping onto itself thing, right? So you do several collapses, several loops, if you like, right? Then at the end, when you've done all that and you're sure that it can't get any like it can't go back to the way it was, it's fixed now. Now you're going to do the future pacing. That's a different loop. It's just we use the word loop too many times, right? So that's a different kind of loop. And that's the loop that I was talking about when you first came in, when I said, you've seen me do it before, where you do the loop over and over, and then you set that loop onto another loop so it becomes like an infinity sideways 8 double loop. Yeah? Does it make sense? Okay. I can breathe now.
It kind of works in a similar way to the timeline trauma release that I use.
The only difference is I do the second
got a bit more with the stacking of the resources.
Yeah, the only difference is I do the second loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's the same. TJ disappeared. TJ was like, he's talking too long. Might as well leave him be.
I don't know. I had to return some tea that I rented. But
I don't know if I answered the question.
What's that?
You did? Okay.
That's what I love about what we do, is there are so many amazing techniques out there and combinations of which that you can do. I'm sure Elijah will also attest to this, that there are clients where you can hit them with what you're used to and it kind of works. And then you go and you hit them with something else and it kind of works. And you're like, oh. Then all of a sudden you pull out this technique that you learned a while ago and you're like, yeah, that one's a little simple, but you hit it and you just watch them go, oh, that was it. Dr. David likes to say that, hypnosis is one of those things that you can screw up 9 times in a row and on the 10th time, fix it. They don't know any different. Because the bottom line is, did you get the outcome you were looking for? Yes, Lenore.
So in the 3 examples you just said, like you gave them something, it wasn't clicking. Is that messing up, or is that trying something different? Like, I focus on messing up and probably just getting hung up on a label here.
Thank you.
Never mind, I'm stopping.
No,
I'm
no,
just no, because it's me, like getting hung up on a label.
but it's not messing up.
That's
It's-
that's where I'm like, aren't you just trying different things and being relentlessly determined
Yes.
to get the outcome?
And you're saying what everybody else needs to hear, Lenora.
Yeah, it's all about that relentless drive to figure out what you can do to help the person. And, you know, it's awesome when you can hit a home run on the first pitch.
Yeah, not that's why, because you can't hit a home run on the first pitch. You might, you know, one in 6, 1 in 9, you might get lucky, right? But that's why you do the loopy. That's why you go, oh, okay, and then you get the second thing, and then you, oh, now that it's interesting and you've got the excitement, now look at the problem. That's why you do the recursive collapsing of the anchor. Because if you just collapse an anchor, if I just use excitement to collapse anxiety, then the only way they'll be able to collapse anxiety in the real world is if they can get excited. And if they're in a context where they can't get excited for whatever reason, how are they going to escape the anxiety? Whereas if I use anxiety and interesting and, you know, I don't know, laughter and, you know, my favorite one, I don't know, right? Confusion, okay? And, you know, half a dozen others, then they will have several entry points into collapsing anxiety in the real world. Because they could use excitement, they could use uncertainty, they could use confusion, they could use interesting, they could use laughter, they could use, you know, any number of other things as entry points to collapse the bad state in the real world, because we will have wired them all in the session. Yes.
Can you explain how that actually is different from chaining anchors? You know,
Chaining is when you build the train.
resources.
So the train, I don't know if you were here for the very beginning when I used the train metaphor, right? Where the chaining is basically building a train of steps, right? So, okay, Fran, do this for me. I want you to pick a spot on the wall and look at it. Okay, and as you look at the spot on the wall, I want you to spread your vision out. Look at me first. Stop. Right, okay. First, you look at the wall, and then when you look at the wall, I want you to, even though you're still looking at that spot on the wall, spread your vision out so you can see what's happening to the sides, even though you're still looking at the spot. Yeah, okay. So, okay, you do the first one, and you look at the spot on the wall, and then, yeah, okay, now you got your peripheral vision. As you got your peripheral vision, I want you to take a long exhale. Again, normal inhale and a long exhale. Okay, stop. We're going to do it again. Okay, so again, I want you to look at the spot on the wall, look at the spot on the wall, and then go into peripheral vision, and then take a long exhale. A normal inhale and another long exhale. All right, okay, stop. Shake it off. Look at me. All right, you ready? Now look at the spot on the wall. You go into peripheral vision. And in peripheral vision, as soon as you're there, you long exhale. Normal inhale. Long exhale. And imagine yourself now moving through space, whether that's outer space or the sky or through water. Just imagine moving through space, creating big arcing curves and doing loop the loops and spinning on a dime and changing direction and just moving through space. Okay, stop, shake it off, shake it off, shake it off, shake it off. Okay, now look at the spot on the wall. Go into peripheral vision. A long exhale. Start moving through space. Right. Now, if I just keep repeating this with you 3-4 times more, we'll get to a point where I'll tell you, look at the spot on the wall, and you'll instantly be moving through space. Meaning the rest of the chain has become unconscious. I just have to do the first trigger to get the last car. I have to fire the trigger at the front of the train, and you're at the last final car of the train, which is moving through space, and the chain itself is unconscious. That's chaining.
So conditioning.
It's chaining anchors.
Yeah,
right?
you're conditioning me to go that jump. Yeah.
Right. But I want you to still have activated those other things, the peripheral vision and the long exhale breathing, right? But really, the goal is to get you to a point where you're moving through space, right? And we can do that by using what is probably the best trigger, which is pick a spot on the wall, right? So it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter whether you're indoors, outdoors, anywhere you are. It's like, oh, just pick a spot somewhere. And as soon as you pick the spot, and you're already moving through space, right? That's chaining. Chaining is like a sequence versus whatever the other one was that you asked about before that. Yeah.
Induced.
No, stacking. The other one was stacking. We're stacking resources to then collapse and anchor. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Stacking versus chaining. Got it.
Yeah. Did you know you can chain stacks?
That's cool. No, I hadn't thought of that. Thank you.
Or stack chains.
And Holly had her hand up.
Yeah, this is kind of go back a little bit, but to the question about messing up, I think that maybe sometimes we need to think about it. So I've been having lots of problems with my car, so that's the first thing that came into my mind. And you might have, let's say, a light comes on in your car, or it's having trouble, like my air conditioning specifically is broken. There might be 5 different things that could cause that, right? If you go to the mechanic and he knows there are 5 things on his list and he checks number 1 on his list and it doesn't work, that's not failure. That's him going through checking to see what works and doesn't work. That's just research. So I don't know if that helps any, but that was the first thing that came to my mind.
Great metaphor.
Love that one.
That was a great. Let's keep going. we got 22 minutes left. What else we want to fill in here? Then I appreciate. That's why I love having this setup, because I want different viewpoints, different setups, so we can hear different.
You know, viewpoints. This is another big one, right? Imagine, I don't know how you could do it. Imagine like I don't know, like I need like a thing. I don't have any things in my room. Imagine like I don't know, like this pen, right? Okay. Imagine that you were looking at this pen from where my finger is. Inside your mind, change your point of view so that you could see this pen with its, this pen is like the clip bit that clips onto your shirt is on this side, right? Okay.
Yep.
So, and it's a clicky top pen, right? But imagine that you were where my finger is here, and you were kind of looking at it from that point of view. Can you all do that?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And now imagine that you were looking at it from that point of view. And now imagine you were looking at it from that point of view. And imagine you were looking at it from this point of view. I'm going to switch hands, but imagine you could look at it from this point of view, or even down here, this point of view. Now, if you do this with a client, you take an object and you do this point of view exercise, and you run through about 50 different point of views in the space of a minute, real quick, really, really quick. Like imagine it from here, imagine it from here, imagine it from here, imagine it from here. Some of them far, some of them near, some of them, right? And then have them think about their problem. You'll be surprised how quickly they can come up with solutions because they've been primed to look at different points of view. It's crazy. It works so well. It actually works crazy, crazy well. So I do recommend doing the points of view exercise just with yourself and with anyone else, because the more different points, the more you're primed to look at things from different perspectives. It's kind of priming you to seek out different perspectives, yes. Right? And so that's a really good one. It just kind of came to mind when you said point of view. Definitely worth trying.
One that I came up with that does kind of that, especially for people that are afraid to look at things that have happened to them, is what I call horseshoe disassociation, where I will have the person that's present that's too afraid to deal with the issue step out of themselves so that they're seeing the person that's looking at the issue. And then have them step out again, and I have them do that 5 times, but in a horseshoe configuration. And now they're shoulder to shoulder with the person who is dealing with the issue. And I have them communicate to each other about what's going on, but I'm talking to disassociated person number 5 who is extremely safe now. And their back is to the event that's happening. I've done this with severe trauma where they're so afraid of going back there that it's locked in too deep. It's too much for them to handle. When I can get them to disassociate 5 times in a horseshoe, now they can communicate and talk freely, and the ability for them to come up with the solutions about what happened is much easier for them. When the solutions and all the stuff, and they realize that the event has passed, they survived, they've made it, and they've been able to find out the solutions and everything, now they get to collapse back into themselves with all the information and understanding what they were able to get out of the session. Does that make sense? Any questions on that?
I can't quite get my head around that. Are you able to do a bit of a demo on that?
Can I do it?
Well, if you can,
okay, you do it. It's fine.
If you can picture, if you were looking at the screen right now, and what's on the screen is what happened to you. Very traumatic, and just the thought of it is too much to bear. And so I would say, okay, I want you to disassociate yourself, step out of your body so that you are now back here and you can see the person in front of you that's looking at the screen. Now I want you to do that one more time, but in the shape of a horseshoe. And now I want you to do it one more time, and now you're facing backwards, and do it one more time. And now the person is here that you started with. They're looking at the screen and they can tell you what's going on. But the screen, the event, the situation is to your back. And now I can say, I want you to tell this person that today's date is July 26, 2022. We've made it. We survived. And here's what I learned from that situation. Share the lesson. And when this person finally understands that they've made it through what they're facing, a lot of times all of the energy and everything that's associated with that will dissipate. Because in their mind, they were still in that event. It's right here, it's live, it's happening. And once they are able to be communicated with, like, no, we've made it, we're good, we're safe. In fact, here's the life that we're leading right now. Now, whoops, now you can bust everything, but now you can take and collapse everybody back into the person in the room. And they still have all of that information that the two of them were able to share with each other. Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've got the structure now, but how is that better than just multiple disassociation levels, that your back's actually facing the event when you're doing that therapy?
It's a form of safety.
Right.
For the client, that I actually had to come up with it on the fly for somebody at one of our trainings who opened up Pandora's box, and the seven-headed dragon jumped out and brought the whole trailer park with him. And the only thing I could think of was they needed to be safe enough to be able to have their back to the situation so they could talk. They were so terrified that even if I would have disassociated them 12 times in a straight line, the 12th person could still see the event happening. But because I was able to make them do a loop, and now the person that I'm talking to has their back to the event, they're safe. They can't see it. They're everything they can, and they can communicate with the person that's dealing with it because they're shoulder to shoulder next to each other. It was just an easy way for me to come up with a way to help them to get calm enough to be able to work through the situation. Because you know how Dr. David is. Abreaction means, all right, time to jump in because we found the trigger. What's your spin on it, Elijah?
I like, sorry, this thing, it's too bright for my eyes, but you can't see me without it.
You're like the shadow.
Yeah. I like, first of all, if it's like a phobia thing and you're using the look at the screen metaphor,
Yep.
I don't like to use the big screen metaphor anymore. I use small screen, so it has to be, see it on something the size of a phone, see it on something the size of an iPad, and make it, on the other side of the room, but sort of down below you, kind of where the floor meets the wall. Right? So that's one thing. It's on a much smaller screen.
Yep.
And that it's below you. Right? So, so you can look down on it. You can really embed that command, so you can look down on it. Right? Kind of thing. That's one. In terms of chain of dissociations, I always like, Fran, imagine you're in a room sitting down watching the TV. Okay? Now, close your eyes. Imagine you're watching the TV. Now imagine that a part of you could float up out of you and go to a different seat in the same room. And you could watch from that position, you could watch Fran watching the TV. Yeah. Okay. And then imagine like another part could float maybe a little bit out of the original Fran and a little bit out of the new Fran, right? And go to a third part of the room, maybe leaning up against one of the walls over there. And you could watch this new Fran watching the original Fran watching the TV. Yeah. Okay. And perhaps maybe the three of you could each have a little bit contribute to a fourth part that could be, maybe on the ceiling where the light is, and you could follow that whole daisy chain round, watching yourself, watch the TV, right? And perhaps a fifth part of you could emerge and be the TV. And what would it be like to know that you're being watched by someone that's being watched, by being watched? Yeah. And finally, let's have a sixth part that could be a fly that's able to fly around the room, so it doesn't have to stay still and stay in one part, but it could buzz around the room, watching yourself, watch the TV, who is in fact yourself. And then ask yourself a question. Which one is the real me? Become aware of all those different perspectives at the same time. And understand that you can only really be limited by what you don't allow yourself to see. Even more of what you didn't used to. Now that you can, choose to look at things from a different perspective now. Okay? So just kind of integrate yourself and bring all the different parts of you back together into one. And when you feel whole, you can open your eyes. So that's an exercise I might do with someone when there's nothing necessarily traumatic to look at, but you just want to do the different dissociations and show them just how easy it is to split themselves into something awesome, or split themselves into as many different pieces as is required until they find something awesome and then reintegrate themselves into one.
It was really
because
weird.
every time one of those separated parts disappears and becomes part of the whole again, does the whole not acquire all of the knowledge of the part? It's the Kage Bunshin.
Sorry?
Which, if you watched Naruto, when I told you to watch Naruto, you would know what I'm talking about. The next time I tell you people to watch cartoons about ninjas, you should listen to me.
It was really weird being the TV, being watched by all those parts. That was very different.
Yeah, but that means you're the show and the star of the show.
It was quite uncomfortable initially.
Initially. But it's only you watching yourself, so there's nothing to hide, right?
Yeah.
Kage Bunshin.
Sorry?
Kage Bunshin.
Kage Munshin.
Bunshin.
Bunshin.
That's right. Kage Bunshin. It means shadow clone. Telling you, Naruto, anime about ninjas. Watch it.
And that brings us to
Did I waste enough time for you, TJ?
you didn't waste any time.
Oh, well, I'll try harder next time.
You added well to the time, which is what I like, which ironically fits right in with this quote that I was going to share. You don't believe what you see what you already believe. Be mindful of your own perspective as it will shape your experience. I'll read it again. You don't believe what you see what you already believe. So be mindful of your own perspective as it will shape your experience.
Who said that?
I wish I knew.
Hmm.
Didn't get
Little
that.
like Red Riding Hood said that, I think.
What's that?
Little Red Riding Hood.
Yes.
She said that just before she ran into that wolf that ate her grandma.
Maybe it was Alice just before she tried the mushrooms.
Can you repeat that, TJ?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. You don't believe what you see. You see what you already believe. So be mindful of your own perspective as it will shape your experience.
Thank you.
Yep. One of the things that came to mind when Elijah was doing the perspective on the pen was that simple little meme about the two people standing at either end of a shape, and they're arguing, it's a 6, no, it's a 9, it's a 6, no, it's a 9. Well, both of them are correct from their perspective, but they're only seeing it from the one side. And until they take the time to switch places, chances are they won't understand what the other person is arguing about. Which ties again, you don't believe what you see what you already believe. So be mindful of your own perspective as it will shape your experience. It's a 6 because I've always stood at this end of it. No, it's a 9 because I've always stood at this end of it. So if you both would just flip and switch sides for a bit. So that brings us up to the top of the second hour and a close to another triple T, number 30. And if, for those of you that are watching the recording, thank you so much. Please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell and share this with as many people as possible. Join us live so that you can ask questions. And as you can see, we love questions here. I want to thank all of you guys who show up, make this worth my time. Hopefully my time was worth your investment of your time, because time is the only thing that I cannot give back to you. And for you to take this amount of time out of your life and share it with me, don't think that I take that lightly. It means a ton to me, and I appreciate every single one of you. So for now, it's time for me to say goodbye and thanks again. And I won't see you in 7, but our wonderful Lenora will be here taking over the reins for me. Again, I'm super excited about that. So please show up and give her your support. And that means I will see you not in 7, but in 14. looking forward to seeing all of your beautiful faces again. And until then, take care of yourself. Be nice to each other. And know that I love you deeply. Bye.